old story that got bandied around years ago within my family about my nan's neighbour.
I've got confidence in this.
Yeah.
I don't know why.
Nan's neighbour.
Nan's neighbour's good looks. What do you want to hear?
It was about 1995. My nan lived in a block of flats in Catford, southeast London. Quiet, lovely lady who minded her own business. She lived next door to an old chap called Len. Len had lost his wife, Doll, about a year before. Up until his wife's death, Len was a relatively quiet man, enjoying the odd game of bowls and a pint at the local, but was rather TV obsessed. This all changed, however, about 6 months after his wife's funeral. At a neighbourhood watch meeting, Len happened to reluctantly mention that he had met someone new. She was a widow like him, and that he'd always had an eye on her, but now that he was a widower himself, he felt able to make the move. Although slightly shocked by the news, my nan was relatively happy for him. A few months after that, Nan started to comment on loud music coming from Len's flat, sometimes at all hours, and a loud woman's voice, with Len shouting back at her.
Right.
She became increasingly concerned when she walked past Len's kitchen window one afternoon and could hear him shouting, "You've been a very naughty widow, and now I'll have to teach you."
Naughty widow.
Only to then glance through the window to see what looked like a young woman dressed in nothing but a black coat tied to a chair with Len stood over her, gyrating. This continued for quite a few weeks. The loud music, more glimpses through Len's window, revealing even more odd behaviour. And now other neighbours becoming equally worried as to what was going on.
I think we know what's going on.
Then one evening, on her return from the shops, my nan found Len out on the communal balcony, drunk and looking a bit agitated.
Oh, God.
When she asked him what was wrong, all he could say was, "Her head's come off. I don't know what to do."
Her head's come off, and I don't know what to do.
Naughty widow. God.
Understandably mortified, my nan went inside and called my mum, who said, "Oh, don't worry, it's probably just an outpouring of grief over his late wife." But as far as my nan was concerned, Len might have done something terrible. Eventually, one of the other neighbours had had enough and called the police over concerns for the safety of this new woman in Len's. Good old Len. Oh, yeah.
Harmless old Len.
Yeah. Relatively quiet old Len.
Up to a bit of telly. Oh dear.
The police turned up, forced entry into Len's flat, and apparently to their horror, amongst some 30-odd empty gin bottles, they found Len passed out, along with a female mannequin. Dressed in fishnet stockings, wrapped in a large black hooded bathrobe, along with the photo of the then Scottish widow's model, Amanda Lamb, glued to its face. Another separate mannequin head was apparently found in a bin liner, again with Amanda Lamb's face attached, with the word "spare" written on the back of it in lips. Lipstick.
Like he has to remind himself he's got a spare. Right.
Oh wow.
I subsequently met Amanda Lamb about 8 years ago at a function.
Oh, what to talk about? Yeah.
It took every ounce of restraint to not recount that story. All the best, guys. Jamie. Well, Jamie.
At number 9, The Smiths. A wonderfully written tale about a dirty, sexy, homemade sex tape.
This is from Ben. This juicy little bit of gossip started in the 80s, continued into the 90s, and may well continue on into the future. Here's hoping. My older brother, my sister for the 6th form, and myself all attended the same middle-of-the-road Surrey public boarding school. One day, one of the boys, boy A, went round to his mate's house, and while he was there, he discovered a videotape upon which had been recorded the saucy antics of his friend's parents. From what I've heard, it included the father, we'll call him Mr. Smith, instructing Mrs. Smith to get your nylons off. Before walking into view sporting a fine pair of leather Grundies with a zip. Then they got butt naked and started to fuck. Boy A did whatever any self-respecting, God-fearing friend would do in the same situation and took it upon himself to steal the aforementioned videotape, take it into school, and show it to everyone in his house for a week or so, and then distribute it to all of the other houses in the school to enjoy. Could have been that. Except that one day, at some point afterwards, it turned out not to be. A different boy had been waiting at the train station in his school uniform when a car pulled up. The window rolled down, and a lady offered to give him a lift up to school as her son went there too. They chatted a bit on the journey. It became clear she was none other than Mrs. Smith. The boy may have said something about her nylons or about her husband's Grundies. We'll probably never know what, but suffice it to say, she knew exactly what he was going on about. The boy got deposited at school and Mrs. Smith went on her way. The next day, Smith Jr. was nowhere to be seen, and in fact he never again returned to that school. But there were rumours that his parents did not take to it very well. The story went down in school folklore to be repeated by various gossip mongers over the year. That could have been that. Except that one day, at some point afterwards, it turned out not to be. One such gossip monger decided it was a good idea to dust off the old Smith story to a dinner party of friends, strangers and acquaintances. That gossip monger was my sister. The story went down extremely well and everyone had a great laugh at the Smith's expense. Or so my sister thought. Soon after the meal had finished, however, one of the slightly older couples that had been in attendance made a hasty exit.
Oh my god.
Upon some very light detective work, it became apparent that their son had once attended the very same school that we had, and that they were Mr. and Mrs. Smith. And fuck me, if my sister hadn't just told the Smith story to the very stars of the 80s amateur fuck tape.
Oh, amazing.
That could have been that. Except that one day, at some point afterwards, it turned out not to be. You guys decided to start a gossip and decided that the Smith story would be perfect for it.
If he's got another level after this, then
I like to think that the Smiths put all this behind them for the umpteenth time and have moved on with their lives. However, a tiny evil piece of me can't help but hope that they'll be walking down the road in the very near future, only to hear Poppy yelling their story out of the window for the whole world to hear just one last time.